The gold rush era was full of hope, chaos, and a whole lot of hard work. Thousands of people flocked to California, dreaming of striking it rich. But they didn't expect the backbreaking labor, harsh weather, and isolation. In the middle of it all, one thing kept them going: food. Picture this. After a long day of digging, with blistered hands and an empty stomach, miners needed simple, hearty meals that could survive the rough conditions. It wasn't just about filling up. It was about staying strong and pushing through. So how did the gold rush shape what we eat today? Let's dive in and explore how this wild time changed Western cuisine. The challenges of eating in the Wild West.
Today, we're going to take a look at what Native American tribes in the Old West were eating.
Living in the Wild West during the 19th century was no walk in the park. For miners, the daily grind was more than just extracting precious metals. It was about surviving in a harsh, unforgiving environment. Isolation, scarcity of fresh supplies, and limited cooking tools were just the tip of the iceberg. Add to that the unpredictable geography and seasons, and you have a recipe for culinary creativity born out of necessity. Imagine being miles away from the nearest town, with nothing but rugged terrain and a handful of fellow miners. That's the reality many faced. Without easy access to fresh produce or diverse ingredients, meals often consisted of whatever could be preserved or transported. Salted pork, dried beans, and hardtack, a type of dry biscuit, were staples. These foods were chosen for their long shelf life and ease of storage, ensuring miners had sustenance during their isolated work weeks. The Wild West's varied geography played a significant role in food availability. In mountainous regions, hunting game like deer and elk was common, while in arid areas, foraging for wild plants and roots became essential. Seasons dictated what was accessible. Winters brought scarcity, making preserved foods even more crucial. Spring and summer offered opportunities for fishing and gathering wild fruits, but these were short-lived, leading to periods of food shortages. When fresh supplies ran low, miners had to get inventive. They'd mix dried beans with whatever meat they had, creating hearty stews. Hardtack, though tough and bland, could be softened by soaking in coffee or broth, making it more palatable. Some even turned to local flora, learning from indigenous peoples about edible plants and herbs, adding variety to their diets. The melting pot of cultures in the mining camps led to a fusion of culinary traditions. Chinese miners introduced stir-frying techniques and ingredients like rice and soy sauce, while Mexican vaqueros shared their love for beans, chili peppers, and corn-based dishes. Native American practices such as drying meat to make jerky also influenced miners' food preservation methods. This cultural exchange enriched the limited food options and introduced new flavors and cooking methods. In essence, eating in the Wild West was a blend of necessity and innovation. Miners adapted to their environment, making do with what they had. Much like today, food in the Wild West wasn't just about filling your stomach, it was about making do with what you had. And trust me, these miners got creative. So, what kind of meals were they throwing together in the middle of all that dust and grit? Let's dig into what these gold rush miners ate to keep their energy up for all that backbreaking work. Staple food of gold rush miners.
Sampling the eclectic foods prospectors ate to survive during the gold rush.
During the gold rush era, miners faced numerous challenges, not least of which was securing and preparing sustenance in the rugged wilderness. Their diets were shaped by necessity, resourcefulness, and the harsh realities of their environment. Staple foods such as flour and bread, beans and legumes, salted and preserved meats, coffee and alcohol, and foraged items became essential components of their daily lives. Flour and bread. Flour was a fundamental ingredient for miners, serving as the base for various bread products. However, transporting and storing flour in the wild presented significant challenges. The perishable nature of flour required miners to consume it promptly, leading to the creation of hardtack, a simple, long-lasting bread made from flour, water, and salt. This dense, dry biscuit could withstand the rigors of travel and provided a reliable source of carbohydrates. Miners often supplemented hardtack with beans, salted meats, and occasionally foraged items to create more balanced meals. Alright, so we've covered flour and bread, staples which served as a backbone for most meals. But a good miner's meal would be incomplete with some beans and legumes. Let's dive into these protein-packed powerhouses and see why they are valued by the miners. Beans and legumes. Beans and legumes were favored for their ease of storage and preparation. They were rich in protein and could be cooked into hearty soups or stews, providing essential nutrients during long days of labor. Simple recipes like bean soup became staples, offering warmth and sustenance. The versatility of beans allowed miners to adapt their meals based on available resources, making them a cornerstone of gold rush cuisine. The versatility of beans made them the ultimate survival food for miners. But let's be real, beans couldn't do it alone, but salted and preserved meats were the true MVP of long-lasting protein during the gold rush. Salted and preserved meats. The reliance on salted and preserved meats such as jerky, salted pork, and canned goods was crucial for miners. These preservation methods ensured a steady supply of protein, essential for for maintaining energy levels. Salted meats were often paired with beans and hardtack to create filling meals. The preservation techniques of the time, including salting, smoking, and canning, were vital for survival, as they allowed miners to store food for extended periods without refrigeration. Have you ever wondered what it was like to source for raw materials to cook with? Foraging and hunting was an essential for the miners during the Golden Rush era. Foraging and hunting. Foraging and hunting supplemented the miners' diets. Wild game such as rabbits and deer were hunted, providing fresh meat that could be cooked over open fires. Foraging for berries, nuts, and roots added variety and essential vitamins to their meals. These activities not only provided nutritional benefits, but also offered a respite from the monotony of mining work, allowing miners to engage with the natural environment and practice skills that connected them to the land. Summary: the dietary habits of Gold Rush miners were shaped by the need for portability, longevity, and nutritional balance. Now, you might be wondering, how did these staple foods fit into the larger picture of the Gold Rush? Well, it wasn't just about survival. It was about a whole mix of cultures coming together in a way you wouldn't expect. Cultural and historical influences on food during the Gold Rush. The California Gold Rush was more than just a boom in mining. It was a true cultural melting pot. People came from all corners of the world, driven by the promise of striking it rich, and with them came not just their dreams of gold, but their rich culinary traditions. If you were in California in the mid-1800s, you'd find yourself surrounded by dishes that told stories of distant lands and diverse cultures. People from China, Mexico, Europe, and Native American communities all contributed to the food landscape of the Gold Rush, forever changing American cuisine. You might imagine that the Gold Rush was just a bunch of rough, tough miners and their simple meals, but that couldn't be farther from the truth. In reality, this was the beginning of a true culinary revolution. Picture this: a gold miner, just back from a grueling day in the mines, sitting down to a warm bowl of rice, smelling that earthy, smoky aroma. Now, that rice didn't just come from the farm down the road. It came from China, thanks to Chinese miners who brought it with them. Chinese immigrants also introduced dried fish, which was perfect for long-lasting meals. As they sat down with their steaming rice and fish, they weren't just eating. They were bringing a taste of home to a faraway land, bridging continents and cultures in the process. The Chinese miners were one of the most significant groups to influence the food culture of California during the Gold Rush. By 1852, Chinese immigrants made up about 1/5 of California's mining population. They didn't just come for the gold. They brought with them a wealth of knowledge, culinary skills, and of course, food. Rice, one of their staple foods, became a constant on the miners' table. It was cheap, filling, and most importantly, easy to transport. Dried fish was another essential part of their diet, a versatile ingredient that could be stored for long periods, perfect for the arduous and unpredictable life in the mines. The Chinese also opened up restaurants in mining towns, and if you were lucky enough to find one, you'd be treated to authentic dishes like chow mein and stir-fries. These were more than just meals. They were little windows into the rich cultural heritage of a people who, despite facing harsh prejudice and discrimination, managed to carve out a space for their culinary traditions in the American West. And the best part? These dishes didn't just feed the Chinese miners. They caught the attention of others, transforming the American palate and opening the door to the eventual popularity of Chinese cuisine in the US. Now, let's talk about the fiery, flavorful influence of the Mexican miners. Mexicans have been an integral part of California's food culture for centuries, and during the Gold Rush, their contributions really started to shine. They didn't just bring chili peppers, although they definitely did that. They introduced a whole new world of spices and flavors that would forever change the way Americans thought about food. Imagine sitting down for a hearty meal after a long day of mining. What would make that meal stand out? How about some spicy chili with beans and corn? That's exactly what Mexican miners introduced to the scene. Chilies, beans, corn, and other local ingredients became the foundation of many Gold Rush meals. These ingredients weren't just delicious. They were practical, filling, and easy to prepare, which was essential when time was scarce and the work was backbreaking. Mexican food didn't just stay in the mining camps, though. It spread like wildfire, laying the groundwork for the Tex-Mex and Southwestern cuisines we know and love today. You can trace the roots of chili con carne, tamales, and even tacos back to this time. And let's be honest, who doesn't crave a bowl of chili when the weather turns cold? It's as comforting as the history it carries. Before the Gold Rush, long before the miners even set foot on California soil, the Native American tribes of the region had already mastered the art of cooking with local ingredients. The Gold Rush may have introduced a flood of new cultures, but it was the Native American influence that shaped much of the food that the miners ate. The three sisters, corn, beans, and squash, were the foundation of their diet. And these crops didn't just feed the indigenous people, they sustained the miners as well. Native Americans taught the settlers and miners how to use these local crops in innovative ways. Corn, beans, and squash are a perfect trio, each one helping the other grow, and together they form a balanced, nutritious nutritious meal. Imagine a warm cornmeal dish, rich with the flavors of roasted squash and beans, a true taste of the land that had been home to the Native Americans for thousands of years. The miners, many of whom were struggling to find enough food in the harsh wilderness, were grateful for the abundance of these ingredients. But the influence didn't stop at just the Three Sisters. Native Americans also taught settlers how to forage for wild foods, things like acorns, berries, and roots, which made the food culture even more diverse. There was a sense of sustainability and resourcefulness in Native American cooking that many miners took to heart. It wasn't just about surviving, it was about thriving with what the land could provide, a philosophy that lives on in the modern-day farm-to-table movement. Last but certainly not least, let's not forget the European immigrants who played a major role in shaping the food culture of the gold rush. German, Irish, Italian, and other European settlers brought their culinary traditions with them, only to quickly adapt them to the rugged conditions of the California wilderness. What good was a hearty pot roast or a rich stew if you couldn't get fresh ingredients or enough firewood to cook it? European immigrants became masters of adaptation. Take the Germans, for example. They were known for their sausages and hearty meals, but in the wilds of California, they had to make do with whatever ingredients were available. They incorporated local meats, vegetables, and grains into their dishes, creating a fusion of European recipes and local ingredients. The same could be said for Italian immigrants, who were used to making rich pasta dishes, but had to get creative with their pasta-making techniques when flour and other key ingredients were scarce. Alright, so we've talked about what the miners were eating, but now let's talk about how they pulled it off. Imagine trying to cook a meal with a campfire. Not exactly a five-star kitchen, right? But hey, necessity is the mother of invention. Let's see how miners managed to cook tasty meals with just a few tools. Cooking methods and tools. During the Gold Rush era, miners in the Wild West faced numerous challenges, not least of which was preparing their meals under primitive conditions. With limited resources and time constraints, they developed unique cooking methods and utilized makeshift tools to sustain themselves. Have you ever wondered what life would have been like in the olden days? Well, in the absence of modern kitchens, miners relied on open flames to cook their meals. They often used cast iron pans or Dutch ovens, which were durable and versatile, allowing them to fry, saute, or stew their food over the fire. These heavy-duty cooking vessels could withstand the rigors of camp life and were essential for preparing hearty meals. The simplicity of these tools meant that miners could cook a variety of dishes, from frying bacon and eggs to simmering stews, all over an open flame. The open flame cooking method also imparted a distinct smoky flavor to the food, adding a rustic touch to their meals. However, this method required constant attention to maintain the fire and prevent food from burning, a task that was often challenging given the miners' demanding schedules. Now let's talk about how water scarcity was a significant issue for miners, especially those working in arid regions. This limitation influenced their cooking methods and the types of dishes they could prepare. Without easy access to fresh water, miners had to be resourceful, often relying on dried or preserved ingredients that required minimal water for preparation. For instance, dried beans and salted meats were staples in their diet, as these items could be stored for extended periods without spoiling and required only minimal water to cook. The lack of water also meant that miners had to be cautious with their water usage, reserving it primarily for drinking and essential cooking tasks. This scarcity led to the creation of simple one-pot meals that could be prepared with minimal water, such as stews and porridges. These meals were not only practical, but also provided the necessary sustenance to keep miners energized throughout their grueling workdays. Resourcefulness was key for miners, who often had to improvise with available materials. Tin cans, for example, were repurposed as cooking vessels, serving as makeshift pots or pans. By removing both ends, they could be placed directly over the fire to heat food. Knives were indispensable, used for a multitude of tasks, from preparing food to performing basic repairs. The versatility of these simple tools allowed miners to adapt to their environment and make do with what they had. Additionally, miners often used their knives to cut and prepare food, as well as to perform other essential tasks. The durability and sharpness of a good knife were invaluable, making it one of the most important tools in a miner's kit. Have you ever decided to make a quick meal because you're late for work? Well, these miners always had to make fast and simple meals because of the demanding nature of mining work and the scarcity of resources. Staples like hardtack biscuits, salted meats, and dried fruits were common, as they were easy to store and required minimal preparation. These foods provided the necessary calories and nutrients to sustain miners during their long, labor-intensive days. So, we've seen how the miners' cooking methods were all about making do with what they had. But what about the actual dishes they were whipping up? Well, let's take a closer look at some of the famous recipes and ingredients that became staples of the Gold Rush era. Trust me, you'll be surprised by how creative these miners got with their meals. Famous recipes and ingredients of the Gold Rush. Sourdough bread. During the California Gold Rush of the mid-19th century, miners faced numerous challenges, not least of which was securing a reliable food source. Among the various provisions, sourdough bread emerged as a staple staple, cherished for its practicality and taste. Its importance to miners cannot be overstated, as it provided a consistent and durable food option during their arduous daily routines. The science behind sourdough starters is both fascinating and essential to understanding its role in the Gold Rush era. A sourdough starter is a mixture of flour and water that has fermented over time, cultivating wild yeast and bacteria. This natural fermentation process not only leavened the bread, but also imparted a distinctive tangy flavor. Miners, often far from urban centers, relied on these starters for their resilience and longevity. By maintaining a portion of the starter, they could bake fresh bread daily, ensuring a steady supply of sustenance. The practice of keeping sourdough starters alive was a testament to the miners' ingenuity and resourcefulness. In the absence of modern refrigeration, these starters were carefully nurtured, sometimes passed down through generations. The Boudin family, for instance, established a bakery in San Francisco in 1849, utilizing a sourdough starter that has endured to this day. This starter survived the 1906 earthquake, symbolizing the enduring legacy of sourdough in the region. Sourdough bread's role during the gold rush extended beyond mere sustenance. It became a symbol of the miners' resilience and adaptability. Slapjacks, pancakes. Speaking of pancakes, you'll be shocked to find out how versatile they were during the Golden Rush. In the rugged landscape of the Gold Rush era, slapjacks, what we now commonly refer to as pancakes, emerged as a favored breakfast choice among miners. Their popularity stemmed from their simplicity, heartiness, and the ease with which they could be prepared using basic ingredients. For miners, slapjacks offered a quick and satisfying meal to start the demanding day ahead. The versatility of slapjacks was particularly advantageous in the mining camps, where supplies were often limited. Depending on the available ingredients, variations of slapjacks could include additions like dried fruits, nuts, or even bits of cured meats. This adaptability allowed miners to make the most of their provisions, ensuring that each meal was both filling and flavorful. The basic recipe typically involved flour, water, and a leavening agent, with other ingredients incorporated as they became available. The communal aspect of slapjack preparation also played a significant role in the mining camps. Cooking slapjacks over an open fire or in a communal kitchen provided opportunities for miners to gather, share stories, and bond over a shared meal. This social interaction was vital in maintaining morale and fostering a sense of community among individuals who were often far from their families and familiar surroundings. In essence, slapjacks were more than just a meal. They were a cultural touchstone in the Gold Rush era. Slapjacks may have kept spirits high, but let's be real, you can't dig for gold on pancakes alone. Enter stews and soups. The original, just throw it all in a pot and hope for the best meal. Stews and soups. In the demanding environment of the Gold Rush, miners often relied on stews and soups as staple meals. These one-pot dishes were not only practical, but also provided the necessary sustenance to endure long hours of labor. The simplicity and versatility of stews and soups made them ideal for the mining camps, where resources were limited, and the need for hearty, nourishing meals was paramount. The beauty of stews and soups lay in their adaptability. Miners would utilize whatever ingredients were available, often incorporating dried meats, beans, root vegetables, and grains. This flexibility allowed for a variety of flavors and textures, ensuring that meals remained interesting despite the scarcity of fresh produce. The slow cooking process not only enhanced the flavors, but also made tough cuts of meat tender and palatable. Cooking stews and soups over an open fire or in a communal pot also fostered a sense of community among miners. Sharing a meal prepared in this manner became a communal activity, strengthening bonds and providing a sense of normalcy amidst the chaos of mining life. The act of communal cooking and dining offered moments of respite and camaraderie, essential for maintaining morale in the harsh conditions of the Gold Rush. Stews and soups got the job done, sure, but let's talk about the real reward after a long day. Whiskey cake. Because who wouldn't want their dessert with a little bit of alcohol? Whiskey cake. Amidst the grueling labor and austere conditions of the Gold Rush, miners occasionally found solace in rare treats like whiskey cake. This dessert, rich with the warmth of whiskey and the sweetness of dried fruits, offered a momentary escape from the daily hardships. Whiskey cake was often reserved for special occasions, or as a reward for significant achievements, making it a cherished indulgence among the mining community. The preparation of whiskey cake involved combining basic ingredients such as flour, sugar, eggs, and dried fruits, with a generous addition of whiskey to enhance flavor and preserve the cake. The alcohol not only imparted. Okay, so these recipes may seem basic, but they really hit the spot. And guess what? Some of these old-school Gold Rush dishes are still popping up in kitchens today. Let's see how they've stuck around and still work their magic in modern meals. Modern connections to Gold Rush cuisine. Ah, the Gold Rush era, a time when miners were more concerned with finding nuggets than finding a decent meal. Yet amid the dust and toil, some culinary traditions managed to strike gold themselves, evolving and embedding themselves into our modern food culture. Let's take a flavorful journey through how some of these dishes have survived, evolved, and even made a comeback in today's culinary scene. Picture this: the mid-1800s, miners panning for gold and sourdough bread making its debut. This tangy delight became a staple for those seeking sustenance in the rugged Wild West. Its unique flavor comes from wild yeast and bacteria, a perfect match for the adventurous spirit of the time. Fast forward to today, and sourdough has undergone a renaissance. Artisanal bakeries across the globe are crafting their own versions, paying homage to the Gold Rush origins. In San Francisco, for instance, sourdough remains a beloved classic, with bakeries like Tartine and Boudin continuing the tradition. Ever heard of Hangtown Fry? This dish, a hearty omelet with oysters and bacon, was reportedly created in the 1850s in Placerville, California. Legend has it that a miner, flush with gold, requested the finest meal, leading to the creation of this luxurious yet humble dish. Today, Hangtown Fry is still served in some California restaurants, offering a nostalgic bite of history. For example, the Hangtown Fry at the Hangtown Fry Cafe in Placerville continues to delight patrons with its rich flavors. The allure of Gold Rush cuisine hasn't faded. It's been resurrected in various eateries and festivals. In Sacramento, the Gold Rush Grill offers a menu reminiscent of the era, featuring dishes like the Gold Rush sandwich, bacon or sausage, egg, and cheddar cheese on sourdough toast. Similarly, the Gold Rush BBQ in Florida serves up legendary BBQ ribs, chicken, pork, and beef, keeping the spirit of the Gold Rush alive through its hearty offerings. Festivals like the Hangtown Festival in Placerville celebrate the region's Gold Rush heritage, featuring food, music, and reenactments that transport attendees back in time. These events not only showcase the culinary traditions of the era, but also foster a sense of community and cultural pride. Cultural pride in rugged culinary traditions. There's something undeniably charming about the rugged culinary traditions of the Wild West. They speak to a time when meals were simple, hearty, and made with what you had on hand. Today, there's a growing appreciation for these rustic dishes, reflecting a desire to reconnect with a simpler, more authentic way of eating. Chefs and home cooks alike are experimenting with Gold Rush-era recipes, adding modern twists while honoring their historical roots. Conclusion: as we wrap up our journey through the Wild West's culinary landscape, it's clear that the Gold Rush wasn't just about striking it rich. It was about striking a balance between survival and satisfaction. Miners, with their grit and ingenuity, transformed humble ingredients into meals that not only filled their bellies but also nurtured their spirits. Take, for instance, the Hangtown Fry, a dish that combined eggs, bacon, and oysters. Legend has it that a miner, having hit the jackpot, requested the most expensive meal the kitchen could offer. The result? A hearty omelet that became a symbol of the era's resourcefulness and the miners' ability to make do with what they had. Then there's the Cornish pasty, brought to the Americas by British miners, which became a staple for miners on the move, offering a convenient meal. Now think about it. If you were out there, would you have been able to turn simple ingredients into something so legendary? Would you have had the same creativity to make it through the tough times? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content. Stay tuned for more wild stories from the past.